This meeting is being recorded.
It's a rather formal announcement. Morning, everyone.
Hey, Jasmine.
Just going to wait a couple of minutes just until everybody's joined, I think. I can't see who's joining at the moment, Annie. So can you give me a heads up when it's looking like it's kind of stabilised?
Quick, Amy's joined. I can't. I think I might have the same issue as you in that I can see about 5 at a go.
Yeah, that's it for me. Yeah.
No worries. So yeah, we have about 20 people in. So whenever you want, we can start, and then I'll keep letting people in as they arrive if anyone's late.
Perfect. Thanks, Anna. Just to warn everybody that's on the call that's joined already, we are recording this session. So unless you want to be an internet sensation, you feel free to turn your cameras and microphones off now. But if you do have a question,
Recording in progress.
Feel free to pop that. So just a quick agenda that we're going to run through this morning. We'll get the exciting thing of introducing myself and Annie over in a couple of minutes. Give you a run through of the Repairs Online project as it's been so far, why it came about, and the learning that we've taken. And then we'll jump into how a user need focus changes what we design and build. Because although this is focusing around Repairs Online, it's not so much about the Repairs Online process itself. We're just using that as the kind of case study in this. And then can go into considerations and results after the user research rounds, and then we'll open up the floor for questions and discussions from yourselves. We do want this to be quite an interactive session, so do please feel free to drop messages into the chat, etc., or raise your hand if that is possible on Zoom. And if, as I say, if you want to, you can turn your camera on when you do have a question. So Annie, did you want to introduce yourself first?
Hello, like it says, I'm one of the user-centered design principals here at MadeTech. I come from a local government background. I worked there for about 11 years, both at Brighton and Hove and Croydon councils. And my battery's about to run out, so I'll hand over to Fraser.
So yeah, good morning everybody, or afternoon now. I'm Fraser Trickett. I'm a client partner with MadeTech. Only been here around 4 months, but prior to that, I was just shy of 21 years in local government, believe it or not. Worked in a whole host of different sections within there, but latterly I was the product owner for the DLUC funded Repairs Online project, and I've stayed pretty close to that despite moving across to MadeTech. So just going to run through how this workshop will work. We're going to give you that overview of the project, discuss what people found from the user research. As I've already mentioned, we really like to hear from you for this to be an interactive session, so please use the chat, ask questions, etc., or raise your hand and we'll get back to you. You're free to turn your camera on, but just reiterate again that the session is being recorded, and we'll provide some feedback at the end. And lastly, yeah, it is being recorded for the probably final time. So just kind of take you through the Repairs Online journey that we've been through. Just to give a bit of project background, it was a project that started back, I think it was 2019, when I did the first application to run a discovery through to what was at the time MHCLG. And we've worked with the variety of councils that you can see on screen throughout the life of this project on there. So this is now part of the continuous funding model. Hopefully we'll be entering into a next round of funding soon. The live partners, as it stands today, are still Lincoln, who are live with the product, and Newark and Sherwood are really the development partner at the moment, and they'll be launching later this year with some new features that I'll come on to in just a bit. So why did we start off looking at repairs online? Well, for all of the partners that we've just looked at, it was the #1 reason that customers call us. It's a complex service. The take-up is really low for digital online self-service for this. There were complications around diagnosing the repair, but a really important one was that the products that are out there at the moment all tend to be designed around the councils and the back-end systems needs. So SORs are a real big kind of forefront in the way things are diagnosed, which for some of the most vulnerable in society, expecting them to be able to understand what millimetre pipe they've got going to their tap and what type of tap they've got can be quite a big ask. So we wanted to do something that was really nice and easy to use on this and flip that thinking around so that this was designed around the needs of the user, but also to make something that was reusable for other authorities as well, which leads me nicely onto the vision that we set out at the beginning of this project. And that was to design and build a reusable and really important one, accessible tool that allowed online reporting that customers prefer to use as it meets their needs. And a tool that would be integrated through open, scalable and accessible APIs with various scheduling systems so that it can be used by as many authorities as possible. I'll kind of pause that last paragraph on there for now, but just come back to that top one, in that it really stayed a focus and continues to be that whatever we're designing on this, the user needs are first and foremost in it. So where have we got to so far? We've, after a discovery, 2 alphas and a beta, we've got a common service pattern agreed that was based on lots and lots of research with customers and with the authorities, getting lots of data out of there. We've gone through 4 iterations of the product. We're now entering into our 5th, and all of that has been based on that user feedback. We've really tried to test with a wide range of users during that time as well. That includes digitally excluded and those with some difficulties as well. We've got a working integration to the scheduling software. We've been able to make something that's responsive so that it's nice and accessible for everybody. We've had really good success measures agreed through the theory of change, as DLUP fondly call it. And that means we're able to quickly see the effectiveness of the product that we're implementing. And it's great to have the MVP service live at Lincoln. And that's been running for a fair few months now. They're just going through the process of starting to promote it. And there's been a real upshift in take up on there. Without any promotion, there was around 20% of customers now reporting repairs online. For non-emergency repairs, it's worth just calling that out. So it's been great that we've been able to provide this to the residents. So we went through quite a lot of user research in the last beta round. I think we're up to around 40 different sessions now across the life of the project. Sorry, excuse me, my cat. And during that last phase, we've had some real successful feedback from it, in that all of the users that we tested our products with were able to successfully log a repair. I'm not going to jump into too much detail on these, as I don't want to steal Annie's thunder later on, but basically the summary of this is that users were able to flow through our process, understand the fields and the language that was used in here. The language was something that was a real focus of the user testing and has been continually updated and refined as we've gone through this. So it's probably best at this point if I actually show you what the product looks like now. So hopefully that is coming through for everybody. So this is the live Lincoln service. So I'm only going to be able to go so far for this, otherwise somebody's going to get an operative turn up at their house. So this is the first landing page on here. As you can see, it looks very GDS-y, as it was designed on their toolkit, so the Gov UK format, with just a bit of Lincoln branding around here. This first page on here is to try and make customers aware that there are types of repair that this process doesn't currently meet. This will be reduced as we come to the end of this next phase of beta, and leaseholder and communal repairs will be part of the journey moving forward. But if it is an emergency, i.e. they've got a gas leak, etc., we do still want a customer to call us where there's potential danger to life, etc. So coming through here, we've got our first triage point in here. Again, just calling out if there is gas in here, if it is a type of emergency, we provide those details for them. And this works really well on those mobile phones, as from the data we've had measured earlier on with the partners, over 70% of the housing customers were using mobile devices rather than a laptop. So just for our process on here, I'm going to say it's something else, that it's not a communal area, and put in a valid property postcode. That does a live lookup behind the scenes and only pulls back repairs that we do actually look after. Customer can pick their address. And this was where the real difference was between what we were developing and a lot of what was on the market. Quite a lot of the products out there currently were based on kind of a diagram of a house. So that it was a slight caricature, cartoon approach to things where people would say, oh, it's my living room, etc. What we found from the user testing is that not only was it not the most accessible approach in there, but quite often users were confused in that it didn't look like their property, in that they lived in a bungalow, but it's showing a picture of the house, or that the living room didn't look like their living room. So we've moved to nice simple text on here. It works well with screen readers, etc. And then we've got, for every type of repair, a 3 triage system. So first the customer picks the room, then they pick the type of repair. So I'm going to go for something simple. And then there's the last point, which is behind the scenes defining an SOR. But what we didn't do in here was display that complex language back to the customer. So I'm going to say, in my kitchen cupboard, I've got a problem with the door. That the customer puts a much better description in than this, and they can also upload a photo at this point. Again, really useful in terms of the diagnosis, because it gives us the opportunity to see that repair rather than over the telephone, somebody having to try and describe their problem. Customers can provide a number if somebody wants to get in touch. And something I should have called out at the beginning of this as well is that no login is required for this. So anybody can raise a repair on behalf of somebody. So granddaughters, grandsons, sheltered wardens, carers, etc. It just makes this a much more accessible product for everybody. And then
I think that answers a question in the chat, Fraser, about is it mostly for citizens or can it be used for field workers? And it was designed so that
absolutely. So, yeah, cheers, Anna. Annie, beg your pardon. So I can't see those comments coming through at the moment. So yeah, just to touch on that, of course, it does mean that estate officers and also operatives themselves can use this as a tool. But primarily, yeah, it was designed around the needs of the residents on there. We found that number one blocker from doing the user research for residents using existing services was because they had to log in. So removing that on there just makes this much more accessible to everybody. It's also worth just shouting out, because I know that a lot of councils get concerned about road repairs being raised. Arder and Worthing had been running with a similar process for a couple of years and hadn't had a single road repair raised. In the 6 months that Lincoln have been up and running, it's the same story there. I just don't think people have got that appetite at the moment. There is to put their time into creating Mickey Mouse repairs, etc. So this is now going off to the scheduling service at Lincoln and pulling back repairs, time slots that are applicable for that type of repair. Some of these, you can see these are quite far in the future in here, but that's because Lincoln's just moved to a repairs by area approach. So the customer gets to pick their date and time, gets an overview of what's going to happen on here. If I click continue on there, that will actually log that repair, book in the operative, and somebody will turn up to sort out their hanging door at that date and time. One of the things that we've used in here is the open APIs into GovNotify. So the customer gets an e-receipt in effect and that record of what date and time has been booked. Moving forward, at the end of this phase, customers will be able to change that date and time in the future and also log leaseholder and communal repairs too. So hopefully that's given a bit of a flavour of what this looks like, how some of this has been designed around those user needs. Hopefully you can see it's nice and easy to use and see why all the customers that we tested with were able to effectively log their repair.
We've got some questions.
Okay, go for it. I can't see those, so could you shout those out?
I will be your questionnaire. So I'll start with the smaller ones. So are those appointment slots we just saw coming back from Lincoln's housing management system?
They're coming back from DRS, which is their scheduling software. It might also be known as Corona or One Advanced, depending on how long you've been using the system.
Was there anything else you wanted to check or add, Jason, in your question?
No, I think that's probably answered it. Are there any other? Is there anyone else live with this system that's bringing it back from a main housing management system rather than, because Corona's a mobile solution, isn't it?
Corona is a scheduling software. It's not,
right.
yeah, it does offer a mobile solution too. I think they call that Job Manager. But yeah, in Lincoln's case, it's just the scheduling element that we've purchased. We're just doing integration with Northgate's NEC.
Okay.
Scheduling software at the moment. That's part of this next phase of beta. And we're also investigating Total Mobile, which is another one of the leading scheduling software suppliers.
Okay, that's really interesting because we're NEC users at Hull, which was why I was asking. So yeah, certainly of interest there.
Okay, great stuff. Cheers,
Thanks.
Dave.
Alison would like to know, does the request integrate with the council's back office and automatically raise a service request?
So just to explain a little bit, there is a manual process in Lincoln's Point, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The integration with the scheduling software is live, and yes, it does create that job in real time so that an operative will attend. So the appointment is effectively booked at the end of that user journey. The part that it doesn't do is that it doesn't log the repair in the housing management system at that point in time. The reason for that was that we needed to pick, based on the budget that we got, what was the most effective approach for the user. And that really was leaving them with that appointment date and time, and really reinforces that point that we were building this around the user needs first and foremost. We are looking at the integration into the housing management systems, but with the version that Lincoln were running on Civica Universal, we didn't have any APIs on there. So keeping in mind about why we're doing this is that for that greater good about reusability, we didn't want to get distracted by an out of date, out of design housing management system. So yeah, at the moment for them, it just goes into the repairs scheduling system, but not the housing management system. That's manual.
Can a user go back and amend a repair once it's been submitted?
Not today, but that's part of that development process in this current phase of beta. So they'll be able to amend their SOR and date and time, or just cancel it altogether.
And then there's one that is about
Recorded.
Recorded. That is about the number of users that it was tested with. Was the total number 15?
No, the total number was 15 during the last beta round. We've had discovery, alpha, technical alpha, beta, and then a second phase of beta as well. So throughout that, we're well over 50, 60 users, I think it is now. I think it's around 34 of the beta phases that we've been testing on, and they've been from across those partners that you've seen on screen earlier on as well.
Lovely. And as well as the qualitative and moderated user research that we're going to have a look at in a minute, whether there were analytics that were gathered.
There were, yes, there were. So how this was designed was based on the data that we had to hand, and that was around the top SORs or top types of repairs that were non-emergency. So the product was built around that. We've also got the analytics in to understand things like the time of day that users are reporting these measures on here. So it's really great that this is accessible 24/7 instead of the normal 9 till 5 or whatever the contact center hours are normally open. And something that was really keen to build in were analytics on which promotion channel it proves most effective for us. The thing I didn't want to do was suddenly shout about this as a service across Facebook, putting it on the call wait queues, putting it in the tenancy sign-up packs, etc., and us not understand which is the most effective channel. So again, thinking about other authorities taking this on board in the future, Lincoln are doing that in a stage process so that we can take that learning and hopefully other councils can promote on those best channels for them.
Did you want to ask that follow-up, I was going to say Nick, just assuming you were Nick Talbot, but
Yes, it is Nick.
ah,
Yeah, so more than 15 users, up to about 50, 60 over the course of the project. Great, thank you. And then in terms of analytics, I actually meant kind of live analytics as you were testing. So you could see, say, hesitations, missed clicks, that kinds of thing as they went through the form flow.
No, it wasn't that type of user tech. So it wasn't like, I know some of the common website
it was
designs.
like Hotjar kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. They didn't do the kind of eye tracking of things like that on there.
But there is in the sessions, there's lots of notes about exactly that. The person hesitated here or they looked there, but that's from watching rather than from a piece of kit.
Sure. And in terms of how did you define the sampling of the users? Because I'm working at Hounslow, we have about 14,000 tenants. We would like to do a lot more user research about this, but we believe there's a huge range of, say, different languages, different digital accessibility, different vulnerabilities, disabilities, etc. How did you pick your sample sizes and your user types in each case to kind of account for these things?
Yep, sure. So what I'll put out there straight away is that this is an MVP. It isn't finished and it isn't perfect yet. We did have some challenges during the user testing phase in that little thing called COVID came along in the middle of this. We did have plans to go down and use the empathy lab at the GDS building, but that was closed off. So what we did was reached out to the residents that were within the programme already, and even some at Camden, and I think Hounslow were included in that to an extent in there, to get the residents back so that we had a broad spread. We also did incentives to try and encourage residents to step forward on here. We didn't approach the typical things like the tenants panel straight away, because by their very nature, they have a bias in them. So we were trying to just get that as broad a range as possible. Not all bases were covered, but we did ensure that we approached as many different types of people as possible, and we focused on the different types of residency, so things like the sheltered accommodation, those that we knew had carers, etc., alongside them, so that we tried to get as good a breadth as we could do on it.
A good thing you can do, yeah, to not just go through resident associations, is to try and work with the repairs team to either smooth out GDPR concerns around sharing information, or like ask that they contact people to say, would you be interested in being part of testing for this repair service, to get that broader spread.
I do just want to reiterate that point though, that this isn't yet finished, so it will continually develop. And that's why, as a project, we've always been looking for as many councils to get involved as possible to help us understand what those local challenges and needs are. I think people get into that mindset that this is a product off the shelf and is finished, because that's what a lot of LAs are used to buying or purchasing. Whereas this is within the gift of local authorities to take its direction and to develop it around what we feel are those right areas.
Yeah, and I guess I was just being a bit cheeky. We've obviously got a project going on at the moment, and I was hoping for some quick answers to very difficult problems. But yeah, thanks for the responses, and really great to learn from your experience as well. Thank you.
More than happy to answer some more.
I was going to say, if there's any questions that really are specific, or you want to follow up outside of this, feel free to just drop me an email and we can set some time up. Did you say it was Hounslow that you were from?
Yeah, London Borough of Hounslow.
Yeah, great. So I'm talking with Franco over there already on this. So if you wanted to loop in on part of those conversations, I'm more than happy to do so.
And Alison wanted to ask as well, looking at back office integration, are you looking to only API into Northgate, or all solutions, particularly thinking about iDocs, which is fair?
For our first phase, we're looking to use the REST web API services within there because it's the most modern technology and where it will be moving forward. In terms of iDocs, I'm not sure which element of that your authority is using in there. Obviously, they're a supplier that provide things like licensing, document management. So within the housing management arena, I'm not aware of how they fit into that.
Alison?
Yes, sorry, I was just struggling to find the unmute button. Yeah, it's the housing management module that they use, and obviously various other modules tied to that, like licensing, service requests as well.
Yeah.
Hence my earlier question about whether this raises an automatic service request if it APIs into that. But I know that from an iDocs point of view, the modules are quite flexible with as to where APIs can feed into that. So yeah, I was just interested to see where it was on your roadmap.
So again, that roadmap is yet to be defined in some respects about what comes next and what are those big needs of this. I think it's really useful to understand what would stop your authority taking this today.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to do is come up with that matrix to some level to say, well, if you've either got NEC, Orchard, Northgate, iDocs, and Total Mobile, Corona, whatever it might be as your scheduling software, we're kind of working with these things to increase that spread of possibilities for authorities to adopt it, and that they can, because we know behind the scenes that it's so complex about that technical makeup, but really we need to get to that position where it works with any of those. There is an API layer that we've developed so that the principle of that is that it doesn't matter which of those systems, we just need to build in that logic. And there might be that development that needs to be done for it to be iDocs, but I wouldn't be concerned about it if there are APIs or web services, etc., available to it.
Great, thank you.
No worries.
Any other follow-ups?
Brilliant. Well, thank you for so many questions. That's really good. At this point,
hang on. So here, can you explain a bit more what you mean about? Oh, you mean weak signals when out and about on the estate?
Yeah, hi,
Maybe.
hi, my name is Zahir. I am working for Birmingham City Council. So we're building up a product at the moment for field workers, and repairs is one aspect of something that we're building into the platform. One of the biggest areas of biggest challenge that we've had is where where the user loses connection partway through. They started raising a repair and they lose connection. How do you manage that and tackle that in this product?
Selfishly, in Lincoln's case, it hasn't been an issue. I mean, it's such a small city that it wasn't something that has come up, and it doesn't appear to have been one that's at Newark either. I think because they're both district councils and so defined in that, although it's in Lincolnshire, the area isn't rural that we're integrating with at the moment. It might be that becomes an issue in the future when we get to bringing this online with more tenants/residents, but at the moment that hasn't proved to be something that's caused us a problem at this point.
Okay.
And there's one more. Oh,
Yeah.
hang on, there's a couple. I must admit, I don't understand this question, Lynn, so you might.
I can see them now. So yeah, I've got that one, Anna. Yeah, I can see it on screen. How does it connect to the SOR? So at the end point of that triage system, so where I got to in that example of hanging door, behind the scenes, we've got a mapping exercise to say that hanging door equals this SOR code. So just to give a bit of background to this, when we looked at what were the top 50 SORs across Greenwich, Southwark, Lincoln, and South Kesteven, we did our top 50 SORs. And between all of those, there were only 2 codes that matched. and that was between Lincoln and Southwark. But when we looked at the SOR description, we all had a leaky tap, for example, as one of our top 50, but each authority was using a different one of the 2000 subset or had created their own SOR to kind of meet that. We kind of had to accept at that point that it's going to be really difficult to come to a consensus on it. So we allowed the authority to pick what they feel is the most appropriate SOR for that endpoint in it. And it really does help drive down the understanding and measurements of what SORs are being reported, because in Lincoln's top 50, I think we've got 5 different TAP ones in there, but that just depended on which customer service agent had chosen to pick which one, and they get familiar with those. So I know that's probably a long-winded answer, but yeah, behind the scenes, there is just a configuration file that maps those endpoints on there. Hopefully that answers that.
I mean, I'm not surprised by the solution, Fraser. I think you mentioned that there may be 5 different SORs that could be used for that repair. And I think the trick is how you know, the really difficult things here is how you map that fault onto multiple SORs, isn't it? Because the tenant's not providing enough information to do the fine tuning.
The thing is that, again, from that customer's perspective, what's important at this point in time is that we've got the right trade with an appropriate amount of time there.
Okay, yeah.
We were seeing it that, I mean, if I think about my own, if I had a problem at home with a tap, I would just ring a plumber and say, I've got a problem with a tap, and he'd come round and sort it. Well, in a council world, we seem to expect them to understand the finite details of the issue that they're facing in front of them. So I guess through this approach, we're kind of accepting that we're giving the customer some slack within this space, and putting up perhaps a higher level code on here, and putting that onus on the operative when they go out to assign what was the correct SOR. Obviously, that should happen anyway as part of a process. And I think there's still a lot of work to do around that. I think there's an untapped data source or resource within this that we could all learn a lot more from if we were doing diagnosis better. I think we've still got a way to go in terms of the measuring here to understand, well, what actually is happening around this. One of the things I would just like to call out as well is that there was a real advantage into that the process wasn't fully complete behind the scenes, because the CSA gets an email with the detail and with the photograph within it, so that if a tweak of an SOR is needed, hopefully it doesn't change the appointment time too much, they can do that at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Fraser. That's helpful.
Okay.
You've got one more. Have you got it in you, Fraser? One more question.
How does the system work for cases where emergency repairs are required? So emergency repairs, it just doesn't cater for at this moment in time. We want the customers to ring us in that, because it could be that there is a risk to life or something of that nature within there. So if they've got floods coming through the ceiling, if they've got a gas leak, if they're without electrical power in the midst of winter, we're just asking them to ring us. So at this stage, we just signpost those out right at the beginning to say call us.
Splendid stuff. Okay, let's have a think about how user needs focus changes what we design and build. So the user researcher who worked on this project and I had a good chat about what we could show you, and exactly that, how the user needs changed the design of what was happening. And we wanted to try and pull out an example that is a general good user research, the user-centered design principle that, you know, could be used to anything that people are working on. So this is what we've picked. So firstly, to set the scene, here's the success criteria for housing repairs and the actions that they would have to be able to do. So I'm not, with the subsequent slides, I'm not going to go through each one, but it is worth having a minute to have a look at what these are. So a user is able to identify the problem from the options available to them, can select the relevant radio buttons relating to the problem, And if they're related to multiple problems, attempts to select more than one option. Then there's two elements to the user is able to describe their problem to the council. So textual, that they understand what to write in the description box and detail their problem. And visual, they're able to upload an image of their actual problem to the page, and they know whether it's been uploaded correctly or not. And then the user is able to book an appointment with the council, select an appointment time that suits, and can clarify and explain that they know the appointment is booked. And what's interesting is sometimes the parts that you think are the simple bits turn out to be what people are unsure about. So the booking part, you might assume would be straightforward, but it turns out people weren't sure whether the appointment was booked once they had done the booking step of the journey, or whether they'd have to hit the complete button at the end, or exactly when in the journey the appointment was booked. So you can see the stats about this on the next slide. So this is round 1 of testing. So 3 out of 8 users being able to identify their whole problem correctly isn't too worrisome. These are the kind of tweaks you'd expect around describing stuff, getting the room descriptions right, places, items, all that kind of thing. 9 out of 9 could describe the problem, could understand what to write in the description box. So they could do that textual stuff and the details of the problem. So that's absolutely fantastic. 7 could upload the image. That's great. Only 2 understood they'd uploaded the right one though. So this is really helpful feedback to be able to dig into what needs changing. Appointments wise though, some really interesting results that were a little more unexpected. So 5 thought their appointment was booked right after selecting an appointment slot. 3 thought the appointment would be booked once the whole problem was reported at the end. And 1 left still unsure whether it was booked at all. So then if we move on to the next slide. Here's a screenshot of round 1 of testing the process. And the aim isn't for you to be able to see the detail, just to see the process we went through of having each page laid out in order and then adding user comments. So this is our whole journey, and each little screenshot is 1 page of the journey, and then all the colours are the online sticky notes around them. So this is really just to provide context for the next few slides. So here's the screens, and I'll take you through some of the specific feedback as well. So the booking and appointment screen, we had some useful feedback about the text on the page, that there was too much text and that you could turn them into yes/no questions to guide them through. So where it says, before we visit, we need to know if any vulnerable people will be present at the property for the repair appointment, and any information on access restrictions. And what we need to know includes, this is where we could turn it into yes/no questions about if you have a medical condition, disability, or mobility difficulties, if you are a carer, or are there any access restrictions. So that was really useful. There was just too much blurb, people weren't really reading it. Then the next one is the appointments. This is where they can choose what to select. And there was really useful feedback here around needing to accommodate the school run. So actually, 12 till 4 is more like, well, I can do 12 till 10 to 3 every day, but I can't select that option because I'm going to be out getting my kids. So that was really, really useful. And there was some around having first and second choices, or about having more options. The users were, some of them thought that they'd be able to have more options than that. And then the next screen, this is the selected appointment screen. At this point, some people thought that their appointment was booked. And for the contact details, this caused confusion with quite a few people because the main heading is contact details, which they've already given. So it didn't make clear enough that it was specifically asking about how to confirm their appointment. So the contact details you give might not be the way you'd prefer to have that appointment confirmed, or to have someone contact you on the day about it. So people were like, well, why are you asking me again? And all of this is like, as you put each screen together, this is making like a whole journey that people are having to go through, and you're trying to understand how all these different elements might be ending up that they're confused about whether they've booked the appointment or not. So in the next one, this is the selected appointment screen. At this point, oh, sorry, this is the report summary. And again, some people thought at this point it was sorted. And if they stopped now, their appointment would be, they'd get their appointment and the person would turn up. So we needed to make that clearer. And then if we move on to the next one, these are the changes that we made in the subsequent rounds. So you can see what the journey was in round 1 and what the journey was in round 2. You can see that in round 1, the title of the first screen was booking an appointment. And the third is, what is your phone number? And we changed that to be clearer as to why we were asking for it, and made it first. What number should we call if we need to get in touch? In round 2, we then asked how to confirm the appointment by email, by text, and so on, and then when you are available. In round 3, we used the contact number given and populated the questions as, should we use 07123 346 222 to contact you? We turned 5 initial steps into 3, and changing the name of the report summary to request summary, that really helped as well, because then it feels like it's still in the request stage and then report complete. And these changes made all the users confident that they had booked an appointment. So it's really interesting. You can simplify each section and you can work to gov.uk standards and DDS systems and make each individual page really clear and meet each user need. But sometimes you have to be able to test the flow of them all in the mind of the user and think about that whole journey to achieve what you want to. And that's a really important part of user testing, and it's a way that you don't always necessarily expect user needs to affect how you build something. That like we think about service design for the whole journey and for the whole thing we're building, but you have to think about the service design for the actual person using it and what will make sense to them, the service design in their head of their journey as well, which is something that can be applied, you know, to any build, isn't just housing specific, but really interesting. Yeah, it's not just getting it right on each screen, it's making that overall journey flow for everyone. So that was a really interesting and useful thing that came out of building this in terms of thinking about user needs and focus. So there you go. Let me just open up questions again. Is there any guidance or training prompts of a sort as to how to take a good photo? Oh, that's really interesting. Easy, stand this close, make sure the light is on. A bit of a long one, haha. What did you find any issues, Fraser, or, you know, I must admit it's not something I've thought of a lot. I just thought people would be pointing and clicking at, you know, whatever their problem is. Is it something that you found in your initial discovery, Nick, is going to be something you need to think about?
So was that question for me then, Annie? For
It's kind of both. I kind of like asked you both.
Yeah, I just heard the two now. So just answering from my bit, from the testing that we didn't find that to be an issue, but I totally get that it's a valid point and perhaps something to consider on there. I know something that we'd thought about throughout this as a journey was what were those self-help hints along the way on here. And part of that might even be the self-help resolution to some of these repairs, or about what might be the right time to connect them to somebody if it's a different type of repair. So that there's still quite a lot for us to think out and understand what is the best way to approach some of these things. Just coming back to that as a specific question though. So no, it didn't crop up as an issue, but yeah, totally understand the thinking behind why it might be good to include that.
And was it something that has caused, like in discovery, has caused you to think about it, Nick?
It's a concern with Hounslow, but I would say the main evidence source of it is I used to work in Cape Town, and in Cape Town, similar problems, slightly different. So in the informal settlements, local residents or volunteers or employees of a charity would go around logging infrastructural faults like to communal toilets, electrical services, water pumps, stuff like that. And their model was purely mobile based and very much kind of photo first, to kind of say it that way. One of the problems they had was that they were using quite low quality tech because it had to be readily available and easy to replace and in the field, etc., etc. So it meant that the camera was already a bit lower quality. And second of all, in those cases, because you had volunteers or employees, they found that the photos weren't quite good enough for the repair side. So they actually needed a form of training up front as to how to take a good photo. Obviously, when you translate that to a council and its tenants, these aren't volunteers or employees. So you don't get that kind of small group of people that you're able to train up front. So it's a combination of factors with a bit of a mixed in, I guess.
Right, yeah, no, that's really interesting. And what a different background that made you think about it. And it's made me think about, yeah, it's good that it's an option in this context and not mandatory, because there will be both those kind of issues, but also digital inclusion wise, there'll be people who don't have smartphones and can't take a photo.
Yeah, and it may be a kind of alternative channel kind of thing. I know that at Hounslow we've done a big drive to kind of change our comms channels, and although we don't have a ton of the new functionalities online yet, I mean we're now starting to think about chat functions, and in this case what might be nice is, say, a video call. Again, not something super common in councils between residents and councils, but the tech is there, and since lockdown people are very aware, many people more are very aware of how to make video phone calls, and then you can kind of be walked through it. Might provide additional detail beyond a photo. So yeah, just food for thought, really. Stuff we're
I
considering,
completely agree. And like you say, especially, sorry, I think there might have been a little lag there. Especially now when everyone's much more used to it, it is feeling more and more like that should be an option. And certainly general advice would be to like you say, nail those comms channels down really clearly. I started in housing in councils, and I was the website and social media officer for housing. And one thing that we noticed quite quickly was that there was a tenant and leaseholder Twitter account and Facebook account. And once people knew that there was a thing that was being regularly monitored and replied to, that started to be a kind of shortcut. If you hadn't heard back from your repairs, then they would message me instead, kind of thing. So it's definitely a good piece of general advice to make sure that offer is is clear and fair, and there aren't those kind of delays causing people to try and work around the system. And having, it would be really good actually. It feels like the same kind of thing as this housing repairs, which can be, you know, used by so many different councils. A little pilot around if anyone's already done video calls, or if there's a few people who want to try that in councils, that would be really interesting collaboration in the local gov sector.
The only just thing I just want to raise on that is that that starts to potentially limit it back in some cases to the office hours. So it should be mindful of those things in some respects. And without sounding like I'm preaching, but one of the other things that always bugged me working in local government was, I hate the phrase, but that kind of silo thinking with things. And it's a much broader education piece of providing a good digital service across the board. Because if you offer an awful, I don't know, council tax direct debit setup process where it's all paper-based, but then you've got a great online repairs online service, you know, it's whichever they interact with first kind of sets the tone for how they're going to be interacting with you in future. And my big challenge back to Lincoln before I left was that tenancy sign-up process. Because I think it was 17 signatures we gathered as part of, and gave out 24 paper booklets. And and then we're surprised that customers call us when, you know, there's these things online. And it's about, surely we could do something a bit cleverer around all of this. I'll shut up now.
Alison, yes, we are going to make the recordings available. And I'm really pleased you'd like to share this with your housing team.
There was a couple of questions before that as well, I think. So one from Jess, just working in reverse order, about what would change if I had a time machine. I think it's not so much something had changed, but something that I wish that had happened, and that was for more authorities to get involved in it. So that there was that wider message of an understanding of what are those local issues. Sometimes it's felt a bit diluted in some respects by it being similar sized authorities being the driving force behind it. And then people come to sessions, stand-ups, and I'll say, well, why doesn't it do this? And well, we don't know unless people get involved in here and we can understand and broaden that. I know that the kind of biggest issue for all local authorities is time. You know, that's our most precious commodity, really, isn't it? I know it's a big ask for people to get involved in this, but I do just want to say it doesn't mean that you've got to adopt this as a product just by being involved. It's about thinking, well, what is that great product that we can make for as many users, residents, tenants, whatever we want to call them, that are out there, and to get that best of breed out into the market and challenge the norm on this. So if somebody does want to get involved, we've got a next round of potential funding coming up on here. Newark are coming to the end on there. So it'd be great to have somebody else try and help the direction of this as well and understand, well, what are those next stages and what should our roadmap look like? I just want to come back to Zahir's earlier one as well. It wasn't an app as such, but yes, so we're on the 5th prototype on here. So it's always just been a normal web-based product. So yeah, we are on that 5th round, and those 5 iterations have all occurred from that user testing. The biggest challenge, I think probably the one that I've mentioned, is getting people involved on that level. But I would also say in getting some of the housing management system providers to be interested and play a part in this. By their nature, scheduling software suppliers sit in the middle. So they are quite open in terms of sharing their documentation, and they've been quite engaged with this. Whereas housing management system providers tend to be quite guarded about the technologies, don't necessarily want to share what capabilities they have of their APIs. And so that's changing, thankfully, but at the beginning of the project, it was just a bit of an uphill struggle on that.
Just to add to that, we're having similar problems there as well. You know, in trying to integrate in some of the well, particularly Northgate housing is our biggest challenge at the moment. But I think, yeah, we've had similar problems there as well, where, they are quite guarded. And I was quite relieved to hear that, we're not the only ones who've had that challenge. But it's a difficult one, really, because you want to be able to integrate into their applications to utilize their mechanisms for triaging the repair, and that's a challenge that we've had in the past.
Cool,
Yeah, I
thank
totally
you.
understand that. Just out of interest here, which authority are you from?
Birmingham City Council.
Okay, great stuff. I have been in conversation with some people over there already, but if there is anything we can do to help, as we are just starting to do that integration testing, might be just worth us connecting after this.
Yeah, sure.
Great stuff.
And then in general, and then we'll get back to Alison. I just want to make sure that people know that if you want to just talk general user-centered design, user research, how to kickstart a bit of discovery or move to an alpha, just pick my brains on any kind of advice around user-centered design. Doesn't have to be housing. I've come from the same background. I get the problems and challenges that you experience, and that you don't always have huge multidisciplinary teams or large budgets with which to do it. So if anyone just wants to have a general chat and pick my brains in general, do feel free to get in touch.
So am I right to answer?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, no. Cheers, Anthony. I think for that one, it's that a lot of authorities don't have something good in place at the moment, and recognise that for those of us that do still retain our housing stock, that it's the number one reason generally that customers are calling us is for repair. Failure demand is always through the roof. Again, our average across the partnership was 50% failure demand for the repairs, and that was people checking their repair time, asking why somebody didn't turn up, or whatever it might be. So it was kind of a clear win to be able to take something to an extent off the shelf, integrate it, and start to deliver some value back to the customers on there. Again, say wholly accepted, it doesn't solve all the problems, but it was catering for around 70% of the non-emergency repairs, and even just shifting some of that demand away on there, about offering that 24/7 service. And I think just being part of something that is within our gift to control its direction. I think for the authorities that have been involved, is that they want to challenge that space, because everybody recognises what's out there at the moment isn't all that great, without naming any names. Just in those last couple of minutes, I just want to say genuinely really thank you to everybody for asking so many questions. It helps so much to have that kind of interactive session and to understand some of those problems.
Sorry, can I just take up the end of my last question there about the business drivers?
Yeah.
It sounds like it was mainly from an organisation point of view of coming to yourselves because there wasn't a robust solution in place already. Did you have any data to establish that tenants themselves have had difficulty logging complaints, or felt they couldn't log complaints by going direct to the local authority? Was it something that came from, obviously it makes it a lot easier for the tenant to log a complaint, we can see that, but was there any evidence that you had that, I don't know, tenants might have been worried to go direct to the housing agency or to their local authority, that this, because the fact that it looks very much like Gov UK styling, did they feel that they trusted that point of contact more so than going to the local authority, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good point to pick up on, and I guess it was an assumption from our side in that people are, or users are, more familiar with that look and feel. Yeah. I wouldn't say that there was any real hard data on that, but again, from the user testing that we've done, the kind of trust issue didn't occur too much on that, and by leaving them with that receipt of that this is when somebody's going to be coming. You know, they get that email or SMS at the end of this journey. On a telephone call, they're kind of reliant on writing that down themselves. So it gives them more confidence that that has been complete and that someone's coming at that date and time.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Well, it's 1 o'clock. So here, I don't know if you saw in the chat, but I did a leather project on field workers at Brighton. If you want to chat, I'd be very happy to. If anyone else got any last minute thoughts, now's the moment. If not, we have done that thing where we fill our allotted time. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Like Fraser said, it's so much nicer, more useful, more fun when everyone joins in. So we deeply appreciate that.
That was good. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers all. Bye-bye.
Bye.